Well, reparations represents an effort by governments to rectify or correct harms or wrongs that have been done to members of their country or another country. Particularly, it represents when there have been human rights abuses or when there have been other violations of a person's rights that have not been addressed. If I take the position that reparations in the United States should actually be focused on harms caused by Jim Crow and segregation-related conduct rather than focusing on slavery. I argue that reparations for slavery should be in the form of monuments, memorials, museums, and educational programs. But with regards to reparations, I think there is an important claim for Jim Crow. A number of African Americans who were born, prior to the 1960s lived in a very different America much of the time through the prime of their lives. They were denied opportunities in employment and in politics and in education, and those things had huge impacts on them. My 94-year-old grandmother is a great example of that from North Carolina. And so the government never really took a position in terms of how it was going to either apologize or to try to right some of those wrongs. She paid taxes for all of her life, and yet for most of her life, she was denied the opportunity to vote. She was denied opportunities of employment. She was denied the ability to get loans. And she exemplifies a large group of people. I think if the approach that I am advocating is actually adopted, there really is a real viable opportunity for reparations. If we focus on monuments, memorials, and museums for former slaveholding states and for the national government in terms of slavery, I think there can be reparations of that sort. I think with regards to victims of discrimination by the federal government and the state governments that was systematic and operated for long periods of time, I think there's precedent for that. In the case of the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, the United States government provided reparations to Japanese internees who were wrongfully interned and held for 3 years. I think we have clear evidence of a lot of the Jim Crow discrimination that took place in housing and education and employment that was conducted by the federal and state governments. Most people, when they think about reparations, they kind of have a knee-jerk reaction without really understanding what it is. For example, people might say, oh, I'm against reparations. But then if I said, okay, well, would you be against reparations for the persons who were victims of the Holocaust in Nazi Germany? Or would you be against reparations for the Japanese who were wrongfully interned? Or would you be against reparations in South Africa provided for the people who were victims of apartheid? Or would you be against reparations in Japan for women who were forced into sexual slavery? Many people take a position against reparations without really understanding what reparations is. And it's a way sometimes of saying, I'm against any program that benefits African Americans exclusively. And that's a conversation that we really need to have. Why is that? What causes us to have that kind of emotional, rather than an intellectual response? Why is there an emotional kind of response on this subject? And I think that talking through those reasons would help us understand why there may be some other issues that we need to deal with that aren't really about reparations.